Now there's a number of checks you could do to see if your Titan is well aligned, because every Titan should comply to a couple of these basic performance checks, and it should be quite easy to get to a high resolution image with this microscope. Make sure that you have a cross grading in your microscope, and the first thing, obviously because it's a microscope that we do, is we change the magnification. And if we have a beam here on the screen that is more or less in the middle of the microscope, we should be able to go down in mag in the SA range to, in this case, 5,000 times, and see the beam centered around the middle, and go up in mag, for instance 37,000 times, and we have our beam centered, and go all the way up to 250,000 times, and we have a beam on the screen. Let's focus that beam to a smaller area, and we see that it is in the center. So it doesn't matter which magnification you choose, 47,000 times, 10,000 times. Here we have the beam in the center, 18,000 times. At all mags, going at least through the entire SA range, but obviously also when you switch to LM and SA, your beam should be in the center of the screen. Let's go to the lowest SA, 1700. Also here, if we observe our specimen and we would switch to LM, we would have the beam in the center. And we should also have a same feature. So if we look here at this A, from Agar, if we put here the tip of that A in the middle, and we switch from LM to SA, we will see that same feature there. Again, from SA to LM, we have the same feature in the center. Now there is a user-defined reset beam which you can set. For instance, in LM, if you go to beam settings and you do reset beam, then the beam should reset to the center. If so, in this case it's slightly off, we can go to the direct alignments and we go to the beam shift and we can center that beam like so. Press done. So if we have another shift on it and we go to beam settings and we press reset beam, that beam would come back to the center. Same for SA. If we will have a shift of that beam and you press reset beam, that should come to the center. So always make sure that when you press reset beam, it returns to the center. If not, that is when you use the direct alignments and you use your beam shift. Now let's go to LM. And the beam is again in the center. Now obviously if we lower the magnification in LM, also there we should always find the beam in the center of our screen. And that when you go through the magnifications, the image feature stays centered and the beam stays centered. So there should be no hesitation from a user to switch magnifications and to switch modes. So now we have it's dark because we went to a higher mag. So we have to focus the beam. In LM we had a large spread beam of 209 micrometers at 6500 times. That is a very large beam spread, so let's make the beam smaller. And then again we will see it perfectly comes in the middle. So that's the first behavior you would like to see on a well-aligned microscope. If you go through the magnifications, your feature of interest stays in the center and your beam stays in the center. And there should be no restrictions if I'm at 6500 times to go instantly to 2500 times. And be aware that your beam is then very large. If we had a spread beam at 6500, this beam is extremely big here, so that means it's too spread. You can then just focus the beam, look at this number, and bring it to a size that corresponds to this mag, which is a couple of 100 nanometers. So we can focus the beam to a couple of 100 nanometers, and you'll see that the beam is there. Now we see it's slightly off, but we can bring that easily to the center. And there it is. So you don't lose any light when you go through the magnifications. It should behave well. There should be hardly any adjustments needed. Second feature of a Titan microscope. When we are parallel illuminating our specimen, because we have 3 condenser lenses, the third lens will make sure that whatever illuminated area, be it this or that you choose, that third lens will make that parallel. Now of course the third lens has a range, so when you see only one lens active, be it only the C2 with a very focused beam, or on the other side of the range only the C3 here, now we're spreading, but every beam size in the middle, in between, should be parallel. And we can look at this range in beam settings. This is the beam settings control panel, and we are now having a range of 3 to 38 microns parallel illumination. So we have a 1.5 micron beam that is not parallel, but if I bring it to parallel illumination, 3.7, slightly larger, 4. At any point in time, if I now would press diffraction, I should see a focused diffraction pattern and a focused aperture, because being parallel means that we have a crossover in the back focal plane. Now we quickly saw here the diffraction pattern, but the FluCam reacts on intensities and adjusts the histogram automatically in natural mode. So we left click with the mouse on the screen here, and we can use the scroll bar to change the intensity, and we indeed see that we have a focused diffraction pattern. If we bring in the apertures, in this case we want to bring in the objective aperture, that one should be focused as well, because being parallel means that you have a focused site at the back focal plane. So we see here that our objective aperture is sharp, and there is also a crossover in the back focal plane, meaning that your diffraction pattern is sharp. If we go back to the beam settings control panel, we see here the range of 3 to 38 microns is parallel. That means if we now have a 4.2 micron beam, we can spread that beam, and while we're spreading the beam, you will instantly see that the diffraction pattern stays focused. It doesn't change. And neither does the objective aperture. They both remain sharp until there, until we exit this range, and then we're not parallel. But during the parallel range, which starts from 38, so now we're in the parallel range, the whole time, apart from the intensity changing, obviously, we have a sharp diffraction pattern. So here we are again blurry because we're at the lower side, so we're condensing. But when we're parallel, which is here, we will have simultaneously a focus diffraction pattern and a focus objective aperture through the entire range. This is another feature of a Titan microscope. When, let's bring the beam as reset beam, so at higher mag it's slightly off because we changed the reset beam in LM, so we're at very low magnification. I normally set it accurate at higher mag, and then it remains to be good at low mag. Whenever we change spot size, you have spot size 5 here, so you go to spot size 6, you'll see that the beam stays in the middle, in the center. It will move a little bit, of course, because that's the error you have with aligning the microscope. But you see that actually very accurately the beam stays in the center. That's how you should want to have it.